Joe, in the movie we watched this week, two arch rivals assume each other's identities and assume each other's lives. My question to you is, A, do you have an arch rival? And B, if you traded faces with them, what would you do to ruin their life?
Glad you asked. I have a lot of arch rivals that probably don't know that they're arch rivals with me.
Sure.
I'm driven by spite a lot. So basically, if I switched places with them, they wouldn't know what happened when they got back to their life. And they were like, why are there weird emails about Joe Sky Tucker all over the place? So
secret rivalries.
Yeah, secret rivalries mainly. But yeah, I would definitely try to ruin their reputation and bolster my own. I would love to say I would be a good person and not do it, but I would for sure want to do everything I could to make their lives miserable because I'm mad at them. What about you? What would you do to your arch rival?
I think I just learned that you and I have been rivals this whole time.
Surprise.
I would do something that my mom despised when I was growing up. And that was if I was drinking hot tea, which I suppose this is kind of like a little bit later in childhood. I remember this one snow day, I couldn't go to school. And so we were sitting in our living room and I started drinking some tea. And I don't love really hot drinks. And so I can't take a big drink of tea or coffee. So it was probably coffee that I was drinking. And I drank it like this. And my mom looked at me horrified, and I took another sip. She just said, "You are never going to get someone to marry you if you drink coffee like that." If I have an arch rival, that's what I'm doing. I'm ruining relationships with long sips of hot drinks.
Awesome. You used to do that when we lived together, so that was awesome. Probably why it took you so long.
We lived together right after that.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. My mom saying that is maybe your worst trait.
My favorite part was you would stretch it out even longer than that. Like it was exaggerated for perfect comedic effect. And I thought it was hilarious the entire time. I remember trying to do it years later and I started laughing and then I got water down my throat.
Amazing. Well, you should do it when you're switching faces with your rival as well.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, it's the perfect plan. All right, let's get to the show.
Let's do it.
I've been chasing this guy ever since I joined the force. He has no conscience and he shows no remorse. He's the mastermind behind numerous bombings and political assassinations. He has a felony list a mile long: murder, arson, kidnapping, terrorism, you name it. He's the most dangerous and brilliant criminal mind I've ever known. For years, I've been watching him, tracking him, studying his every move. I know his every mannerism, facial tic, gesture. I know him better than he knows himself. And now, after all this time, I finally figured out a way to trap him. I will become him.
In 1997, our guy John Woo steps up to the plate to make a movie called Face Off. We are talking about John Travolta. Nicolas Cage is in this movie. Joan Allen, Gina Gershon, Nick Cassavetes, CCH Pounder. I don't know if there's anybody else we really need to mention. Joe Sky Tucker. What makes Face Off a great bad movie?
Oh my God, this movie is so crazy. I can't even believe how crazy this movie is. I've watched it a number of times, and this last time might be my favorite time I've ever watched this movie, of just how bonkers this movie is. From all of the John, this is him at like probably the high watermark of his, especially U.S. career. I know he's kind of goes back to Hong Kong and does a lot more over there, but this is probably like his biggest U.S. movie.
It didn't make as much as Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
But I do think this is the best American movie he made.
So you have him directing one kind of movie, which he loves, melodramatic action movies.
Sure.
Then you have actors who I don't think fully understood what the assignment was, which is awesome. So you have Nicolas Cage kind of being crazy Nicolas Cage, which is hilarious and amazing. You have John Travolta trying to kind of keep up with that.
Mm-hmm.
You have the craziest, most convoluted script ever, maybe. I feel like there were a lot of shortcuts that they could have taken with just a little bit of exposition, or they could have set this in the future, or they could have done so many things to make it make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have John Woo 1990s action, which just lots of diving out of things and shooting at the same time, sparks flying when I don't know why there are sparks flying in the background, like just so much stuff like that. So this is a movie that literally is, they take someone's face off and put it on another person.
Hold on. So it's not just a title.
It's not just a title. It's literally what happens in this movie. So all you need to know is that John Travolta and Nicolas Cage wear each other's faces for the movie.
Sure.
One is good and one is bad, and we go from there. But I turn around to you, Greg, before I could just talk about this movie. Why is Face Off a great bad movie?
Oh my gosh. This movie on paper should be the worst movie I have ever seen in my life.
Yep, agreed.
And then as you're watching it at the very beginning, it is just 10 out of 10 bonkers on every level.
Yep.
But there's something about it that's kind of like, hold on. Why am I totally enjoying this?
Do I love this movie? Yes, is the answer.
There's some kind of humanity to what John Woo is bringing to the table, to what John Travolta and Nicolas Cage have cooked up. That is just, it's so outlandish, but then it also is kind of like, well, I don't know, Joan Allen's around. She's pretty good. I'm hoping she's getting paid twice as much as everybody else involved in this.
It's like they need a real actor. So like, let's call Joan Allen, because we need someone to deliver in this movie.
And John Woo had to fight for her. The studio didn't want Joan Allen, and he fought for her. And I'm so glad she's in this, but I also question her decisions.
Yes, all of them.
I think she was an Oscar winner at this point, and she just wanted to be in a big shoot 'em up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, but this movie totally needed her. This is a great bad movie because it's almost outside of description how ridiculous it is, yet it is everything that movies should be.
I agree. It's also, it should be stated that, so I remember when this came out.
Sure.
You say 1997.
Yeah.
John Woo, John Travolta, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
These are at the top of their like star power.
Sure.
I'm trying to put it in context today. It would be like Bullet Train, like Brad Pitt, like that's what the star power of the time. This was the biggest actors and one of the biggest action directors ever.
Yeah. I mean, on a much more minor level, this is kind of like Dune 2. You know, you get one of our best directors, Denis Villeneuve. You get Zendaya in there. You get Chalamet. You get Rebecca Ferguson. You've got Javier Bardem. You've got Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh. I mean, it's this movie is basically the Dune 2 of its time. Christopher Walken's in that movie. Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, it's ridiculous. In that movie, when you're watching it, it's also just bonkers. Like, what on earth is happening in this movie? But because it's, you know, from a book and it's Dune and there's like real themes there that go so deep, it's like Dune 2, but less so. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I already regret bringing up Dune 2, but it's like when Dune 2 came up. If I was to sit down with Dune 2 with my mom, my mom, first of all, would have some real problems with how I drink coffee still. It's too hot.
So like, I can't believe you're still married.
Hard to know if it's the movie or my coffee drinking that she doesn't like in this moment. She's kind of like, what are we doing here? What are the worms? What's happening with the worms? So this movie should not work, yet this movie does work. And we'll get to what critics said about this movie. But a main theme of what critics said about this movie is I'm not sure how to talk about this. So this is going to be us not sure how to talk about this, but slow clapping it the entire time.
Yep, exactly.
When this movie came out, do you remember your take on John Woo? Do you remember what expectations you had going in?
I had the highest expectations possible.
Okay. Because you had seen a few of his Hong Kong movies.
Yeah. I had seen at least 3 of his movies. So The Killer being my favorite, and Hard Boiled, and another one before The Killer. And so I was like all in on John Woo.
You had obviously seen Hard Target with Van Damme.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Broken Arrow in the theater with
Christian Slater, John Travolta as well.
Yeah.
So I'd seen all of those movies. So was a big fan, and then it was just like, okay, Nicolas Cage, big fan.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He was missing in all the previous movies.
Yep. John Travolta, this was on his post Pulp Fiction run, where he was probably one of the biggest movie stars in the world at this point.
Again.
So it's just, I was ready for it, and it delivered to me.
Yeah.
I've seen it 5-6 times. Each time it's kind of like watching it again for the first time.
Totally. It's surprising.
You're like, wait, what? And it's also surprisingly long. It really could be trimmed down. Like it gets a little long in spots, but
Yep.
like I hit a point about an hour from the end, and I remember looking and go, oh, I've got an hour. Okay. All right. I can buckle down. I got to get through it.
Yeah, totally.
But then you kind of get into the last act of this, and then it goes so good. There are just so many just ridiculous moments, especially in the opening action scene.
Mm-hmm.
They're just jumping out of doors and windows and shooting, and you're not really sure who they're shooting at. And then you see the person like flying backwards after they've been shot. There's one scene where you can still see the wire attached to the stuntman as they're being pulled back.
Amazing.
There's a scene where they're on a runway and a plane is trying to take off and a helicopter is keeping it from taking off, which I appreciated.
Yep.
And then they're probably a half a mile apart on this runway. The people driving in the car can see into the windshield of the plane, and they've got so-and-so, the FBI agent who's held hostage.
Totally.
So stuff like that is just awesome. You have Nicolas Cage doing his almost like an impersonation of a Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah.
Is the best way that I can describe his acting in this.
Really good way to put it. He had just made The Rock and Con Air, and then he was in Face Off. He did those 3 movies in a row after he won the Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. Top of his game.
Yeah.
There's some great scenes of him crying and celebrating at the same time. It's kind of like a homage to Harvey Keitel crying in every independent film Harvey Keitel was in. It's just so awesome. And the fact that they just lean into the face-off part of it.
Yeah.
I feel like there could have been so many easier ways to get around some of the convolutedness of them, like literally having to take their face off.
Sure.
I mean, he's going to direct in like a year Mission Impossible 2, where the whole thing is like to rip your face off and like have a mask.
Masks. Sure.
So it could have done that.
Didn't we say that Mission Impossible 2 was the unofficial sequel to Face Off as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we did.
That sounds like us.
Yeah. Tracks.
Yeah. This movie needed Nicolas Cage with all of the talented people around. And we will certainly get to a lot of the people who have worked on this movie that make it the magic that it is. But Nicolas Cage and John Woo are kind of the top 2 on that list for me. Nicolas Cage is bringing something that only Nicolas Cage can bring. And he's bringing it after The Rock and Con Air.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, we talk about bands that have 3 records in a row.
Yeah.
This is an incredible run of 3 movies for him.
Yes.
We have mixed feelings about The Rock these days. I haven't watched Con Air lately. Have you watched Con Air lately?
I haven't. I'm worried. I remember seeing it in the theater and I loved it. Who am I kidding?
But would you be worried about this movie as well?
I'd be worried less about it because I've seen it more.
Okay.
And it's John Woo. And so there's sometimes less problematic things in his movies, aside from the glorified violence, obviously.
Sure.
But yeah, I haven't seen Con Air in forever. So I need to rewatch it.
So I just have to reiterate, this movie is 10 out of 10 the whole time.
Yeah.
So they start, of course, with like fairy tale music. There's like Vaseline all over the lens, so everything looks dreamlike. Mm-hmm. And it's John Travolta with his son. This is like 5 years ago. And Nicolas Cage has a mustache. That's how we know it's 5 years ago. He has a bad guy mustache.
Yeah.
He's drinking sinisterly through a straw, which is just made me laugh out loud. He has like a sniper gun and he's there to kill John Travolta. And he shoots through John Travolta, doesn't kill John Travolta, but does kill his son.
Yeah.
That's the opening of this movie.
Slow motion of the balloons that John Travolta's son was holding as they float away.
Yep.
metaphorically being the soul of the child
Yep.
floating away. Also in that opening scene, we have the first time John Travolta weirdly touches someone's face in like a sort of affectionate manner, but also just made me uncomfortable every single time it happened throughout the movie.
And the most disturbing ones are when he kind of like catches the bottom lip of the person. That's 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Like you're going to HR if you do that to anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the director's commentary, which also had the two screenwriters there, John Woo refers, this was his idea, and he calls it a love touch. He wanted to create some sort of love touch that could pass from one actor to the other when they swap roles.
Yeah.
And it is so creepy.
Yeah. I knew exactly why they had to put that in there and what the intention behind it.
Yeah.
And it didn't make me any less uncomfortable every single time it happened.
Nicolas Cage is the sniper. He's like on a hill far away. And when he pulls off the fabric covering up the sniper rifle, which I'm pretty sure you don't really have to do, he does it with a lot of flair to signal to everyone around him. And also, I don't know if you noticed this, but this fabric happens to be not just regular fabric, but it's loud fabric.
Oh, no, I noticed.
Here's the volume of the fabric when he pulls it off the gun right here. Just the loudest fabric in history. By the way, that's when Face Off comes on the screen. So that doubles as our noise for when the title comes up, which makes it
even better.
Yeah. Even better. And 11 out of 10.
There are multiple other moments where there is loud fabric. He puts on his coat. He gets out of his car at one point. The wind is blowing.
Yep.
He takes off his coat and then puts on another coat. And that coat makes a noise.
I am so glad you brought this up.
So good.
Here is why I'm glad you brought this up. First of all, loud fabric made me laugh every time.
Yep.
There are so many loud inanimate objects in this movie. It is a movie made for me specifically.
Yep.
As someone who loves loud lights, I love loud everything. Loud bad guy shoes.
Yeah.
But in the commentary, the writer said, that's amazing that you did that with Nicolas Cage's coat or whatever. Where did that idea come from? And he said, Lawrence of Arabia.
Awesome.
So many aspects of this movie came from the greatest directors and the greatest films in history. John Woo is just totally rooted in royalty, and he is coming from such an earnest, amazing place. But the way that comes out of him is Nicolas Cage has loud fabric.
Yeah.
He seems like just the most amazing human being. I will be singing his praises. It was one of the greatest commentaries where the writers of this movie are madmen and they made the craziest script in history.
Yeah.
But then when John Woo makes it, it somehow is rooted in like relationships and emotions and feelings. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it.
If everyone is committed the way he is, it's something special. You see it in like The Killer, which is another bonkers movie.
Yep.
But when everyone is committed to that melodramatic feel, that earnestness, it works. And this is where sometimes it's a struggle for like Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, I feel like are not quite sure what the tone of the movie is of like, there's a script and then there's the John Wooisms of it. And that just makes it perfect in all the ways that I love.
Yep.
But also probably isn't exactly the movie that John Woo wanted to make. And I haven't seen the commentary, so I don't know how he feels about the finished product of it. But there are moments where it feels like there's a mismatch of what he's going for in his movies and what the actors are doing in it.
And do you feel like that happened in this movie?
In this movie and like in some of his American ones, because I feel like it might almost be like a cultural thing of like the Hong Kong movies, but they're it's like a soap opera. They have to take it completely serious. They have to be totally deadpan about it. And if they're not, it doesn't work. So there's kind of like that wink to the camera of like this being crazy. I feel like we, even in Mission Impossible 2, there were some moments of like the kind of movie that John Woo is making and then the kind of movie it ends up being are a little different. You know, all those moments where there's unnecessary slow motion in a shot that I love.
Sure.
And sometimes the actors don't fully realize why that's happening, or, you know, maybe Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 2 or Tandy Newton. It's not as tight. So those moments are the ones where you can lose it and then it becomes kind of silly. Everybody has to take this world and their role in it excruciatingly seriously.
Yeah.
That's the piece that's the magic to me of John Woo's movies.
Yeah.
Is everybody has to be just as committed as he is to the world that they're in. There are moments that loses it for me. And I love that because that makes it a great bad movie.
Sure.
But it does sometimes take me out of the movie.
Especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
What on earth is Nicolas Cage doing at the beginning of this movie?
It's just like, okay, be over the top. Okay, I'll be over the top. And I was like, okay, I don't believe you.
Yeah. And I think I completely agree with you, where the thing that makes their role switch that happens when they switch faces and somehow they also have made their bodies totally changed as well, which doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like we learn at the end when the good guy gets his wedding ring back from the bad guy who's wearing it, that they have very different finger sizes.
Yeah.
So are we to believe that Dr. Malcolm Walsh of the, the bio cover unit of the government, are we to believe that he actually changed finger sizes as well?
I think so. I think that's what that's what we're led to believe. Everything. And just like with new technology and anti-inflammatories, you'll be on your feet in a couple days or something like that. Oh my gosh.
Seriously.
So
let's stop wasting our time. So when they switch characters, now John Travolta is completely out of his mind bonkers. And Nicolas Cage is supposed to be sort of more internal, sort of having an emotional journey, less of a egotistical narcissist.
Yeah.
But before this face swap, John Travolta is also being bonkers crazy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think John Travolta doesn't quite understand what we're doing here. And I think Nicolas Cage does. That's my read on this movie.
Yeah. Nicolas Cage was trying to give you a range of like, I'm crazy. So that when I'm having to act crazy, but you can see me struggling with how crazy I'm having to act because I'm actually a good guy.
Right.
It reads better. I think I struggled more with John Travolta in this movie than Nicolas Cage.
Sure.
And, this brings up my Nicolas Cage theory of that he's just the same in every movie he's in, no matter what movie he is.
Yeah.
And sometimes the movies are great and it works, and sometimes it's not. And this is one that works for me.
This is one of those that works. Yep.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. This is what I wanted from Nicolas Cage in this movie, and this is what we got.
Yeah.
I also think that John Travolta does a better job of emulating Nicolas Cage-isms than Nicolas Cage does emulating John Travolta-isms.
I would agree with that as well.
But that's on the outside.
Yeah.
What's happening on the inside is Nicolas Cage is just a bombastic, egotistical nutbag at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he does have some sort of internal journey throughout the movie. That is the thing that gets me through the movie, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Nicolas Cage wins the movie.
I think he does.
But also, can we have the conversation that needed to happen about John Travolta?
Absolutely.
I kind of have a bone to pick about John Travolta. I have a very bad attitude about John Travolta's fame.
Okay.
I think he is one of our most overrated actors in all of Hollywood history, which is saying a lot in recent history. I will limit it to recent history.
Yeah.
I think he has been in some great movies and he has been great in some movies. I don't get it. I don't get why John Travolta is a big deal. Can this be an episode of Joe explains why John Travolta is a big deal to Greg Swinehart?
Well, as someone who loved the Look Who's Talking movies when they came out,
obviously,
that was probably my first introduction to John Travolta.
Me too.
I watched reruns of Welcome Back, Kotter, and then I kind of knew about Saturday Night Fever and some of those movies, but I don't think I've ever watched any of his 70s stuff except for Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yeah. I only knew the impression of Welcome Back, Kotter from SNL.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to illuminate it. I think he gets to skate by on Pulp Fiction because it put him back on the map. And then after that, he's in Broken Arrow and all those, and he's making $20 million a movie. But I think it was Quentin Tarantino picking the perfect role for him. The cast in that movie is just insane.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like Pulp Fiction is probably a little overrated now, but it's a great cast. It's a great movie. I don't know if it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's in the top half of Quentin Tarantino's movies, but I think that there are better ones that he's done. So it's John Travolta was then propelled back to fame.
Yeah.
And everyone loves a comeback story. I would say He's definitely an overrated actor to me in terms of what he can do. I don't think he ruins movies.
I do. I think he ruined Broken Arrow.
Shots fired at John Travolta. I haven't seen Broken Arrow in long enough that I don't remember.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't have the charm that, like, to me, Keanu Reeves has.
Oh, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Again, I will die on the hill of Keanu Reeves. I'm a really big fan of his.
Yep.
Not a great actor. And it doesn't really matter because there's a likability to him that kind of shines through. And John Travolta might be the most likable person in the world, but it just doesn't read on the screen the same way.
I think he is. That's something that came up in the commentary quite a bit, was Nicolas Cage was very much to himself on the set, kind of preparing in a corner and not talking with anybody to kind of get the interiority. John Travolta was talking to everybody to make sure they were good. And if they weren't good, he was cheering them up. And something that he did on the set, and maybe this is just what he does in life, is he was doing impressions of everybody all the time. Like he is like a really big mimic and makes everybody laugh while he's doing that.
Are you talking yourself into John Travolta now?
No.
You're like, I'm not kidding.
I think he's so overrated. I'm sure he's a very lovely person, and some of his movies have been good. But that his batting average is so much lower than Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves might not be a better actor, but he's in better movies. There's something about Keanu Reeves that pulls together. Yeah. Anyways. Okay, well, I think we did it. I think we had the conversation.
Yeah.
He also plays like a really wicked, vivacious bad guy in a lot of his movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is maybe the only movie where I feel like it works. And it only works because he's also emulating Nicolas Cage while he's doing it.
Right. I agree with you on his bad guys where he's like trying to be the classic charismatic bad guy, and it just doesn't read at all. It comes across as fake and actorly, and I'm trying to think of like the best bad guys we've had. You wouldn't put him in any of those categories ever.
Have you watched the most recent Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3?
No.
He is so horrible in it.
Yeah.
We promise we will get to it because Denzel Washington and Tony Scott teamed up for that movie.
Yeah.
So we will accidentally watch another John Travolta movie.
Yeah. And we'll probably watch Swordfish, which is him as a bad guy. That movie is terrible.
I don't know if we'll get to Swordfish.
Wow. Is that the line? We've hit
I think we've hit the line. I feel very strongly that we only want to do movies that we can stand behind. They are great. They're also bad.
Yeah.
But we can stand behind that they are great. Face Off is a great movie.
Yeah.
For so many reasons. I don't know that Swordfish is a great movie.
Is it? I can answer that right now.
So, we have a line.
Okay. Swordfish is the line right now.
That's a perfect line for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to the beginning of this movie. Okay. Nicolas Cage drinks from a straw, and he's an evil guy with a mustache.
Yeah.
Can you look tough and drink from a straw?
No, it is not possible.
So what is Nicolas Cage doing as the evil bad guy with a mustache drinking? What is he doing there? Is he winking to us? I know this is ridiculous.
I don't know. I think he's kind of in it. There are moments where I feel like he's going over the top of like, how crazy Nicolas Cage can I get? And so I feel like that's what he was doing. There's no backstory at all on why he's shooting John Travolta.
Right. Never explained.
And then it's, 5 years later and they're tracking him down and, he gets out of the car with the wind whipping. One of my favorite scenes.
Really had like Lawrence of Arabia vibes.
Yeah,
that?
Probably. Yeah, totally. Totally. Takes off his jacket, puts on a loud jacket, gets on a plane.
Yep.
Shots of his gold guns.
With dragons on them.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage's idea, by the way.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then he's just like so over the top with the flight attendant / FBI agent.
Right.
And then the FBI are there trying to stop the plane from taking off.
They've flagged it because Nicolas Cage's brother, Pollux Troy, Nicolas Cage at this point is Castor Troy, and Pollux Troy paid with cash to get things moving faster. And he was flagged for, oh my gosh, Pollux Troy just paid with cash to get a flight. Castor Troy must be close by.
Yeah. And they have planted a bomb in somewhere like the convention center in LA.
The LA Convention Center.
And my favorite part of this is it's set for like 10 years into the future. I don't know how, but it's, usually in these movies, there's like in 12 hours, this bomb is going to go off. In 8 hours. No, it's like 240 some hours. So just so you know what kind of movie you're watching, they're really planning ahead.
So he sets it in this tower, Nicolas Cage, and then he starts doing a ballet dance immediately.
And he's dressed as a priest.
And he's singing Hallelujah.
Yeah. And then there's a choir, and he sexually harasses someone in the chorus. So spoiler alert for my drinking games, just the casual sexual harassment that was just accepted in the mid-90s.
He's a cartoon character. He is absolutely a cartoon character.
Yeah.
He is at a 10 and we need him at a 0.5.
Yeah.
But who else is like this in a movie?
Yeah, nobody.
It is also maybe something we haven't seen before. I mean, he's just like, I'm just going to do a 10 out of 10 on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million cameras everywhere. He's probably one of the most wanted people on the planet. And there he is, like dancing in a priest outfit through the convention center after planning a bomb. And nobody thinks to look there. So anyway, that's the kind of movie we're dealing with here.
A million cameras everywhere. Was that on our mind in 1997?
Yeah, probably not. We had pushing and enhance, but not to the same degree that we have it now. So
Sure. I don't think John Travolta is who he should be at the beginning of this movie. He is like yelling at everybody. He's super upset.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they swap places, Nicolas Cage is like not super upset. He's like super sad.
Mm-hmm.
This is a weak link in the movie. Were they aware of what they were doing? I don't quite follow it, what they're doing. I know there's lots to grab onto, but this aspect of it was ridiculous.
Yeah, like I actually think that John Travolta's character becomes better once he's inhabited by
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like
I don't think Travolta understood.
Yeah.
But little backstory, Travolta and Nicolas Cage, they met and hung out for like 2 weeks to put a plan together of who they would be before and after the face swap. Maybe they're amazing.
Yeah.
This movie is super amazing. So I feel like I need to turn the knob towards I enjoyed it a little bit more than I am right now.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, if you start examining every scene, it starts to lose it. But then if you step back and you just go, oh, this is a movie about them literally taking their face off because that was the only thing that they could think of to get the location of the bomb. It's like, okay, this movie is brilliant.
He's going to go to a jail that is made at the place where they filmed the live action Super Mario Brothers movie.
I think so. Yeah.
And that's where those boots are from, I think.
Awesome. The plan is that he'll just go in for a couple days, get the location of the bomb.
Yeah.
And come out and get his face put back on and everything is fine. But of course, Castor Troy or Nicolas Cage wakes up, then also gets his henchmen to come and capture the doctor and bring him back and then put Sean Archer or John Travolta's face on his.
Yep.
And then you have this great moment when Nicolas Cage has found the location, thinks he's getting out, and then John Travolta as Castor Troy shows up at the jail and he's screwed and he's got to break out of jail from there. That's, I think, my favorite moment in this whole movie.
It's kind of a big turning point. That's when you realize you have a ball game.
Yeah.
It should be when they have the face swap, but when you realize they really are going to take over each other's lives, that's the ball game.
Yep. And then they have interesting parallels that they bring back as he breaks out of jail and he kind of meets up with the old crew and makes things right with the mother of his child, who is Gina Gershon in this.
We know that the person who is now looking like Nicolas Cage doesn't know anything about the guy's life, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, his character, not only as it is now, but also as Castor Troy didn't know that he had a kid.
Yes. So you have all of that happening. And then you have John Travolta as Castor Troy, the bad guy.
Sure.
Breathing some life into John Travolta or Sean Archer's world.
Yep. His 5-year-old son has been killed by the bad guy. Now he has a daughter that is in high school. And when we meet her, she has been suspended from school for eye makeup. Is that basically their explanation? She has eye makeup on?
Yeah.
That's how we know that she's gone on the wrong track?
Yeah. She's one of them street toughs now or something like that. You know, it's like there are moments in this movie where it's clear that it was written by people who have no connection or are not talking to like kids.
Sure.
So it's just like,
sure.
Well, let's make them all made up and, you know, let's give her some really heavy eye makeup and that'll show that she's now in the punk rock scene.
Right.
You
totally.
know,
on the wrong track.
Yeah. She's listening to Papa's got a brand new bag in her headphones. Like what kid in 1997 is listening James Brown.
Right. Totally.
So those are the moments that I love in these movies. And then there was another one where there's like a weird scene with Somewhere Over the Rainbow playing kind of slowed down when there's an action scene, and someone was listening to it at one point, but it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense in the middle of all the chaos.
Right.
You know, just stuff like that I love in this movie. But the more you try to explain this movie, the crazier it starts to sound.
Well, pretty quickly in this movie, Nicolas Cage and his brother, Castor and Pollux Troy, are trying to escape on a plane. The good guys, meaning this pre-face swap, John Travolta is in a helicopter, gloriously low-flying helicopter, needlessly low-flying helicopter.
Yeah.
John Woo is always good for one of those. They are chasing this plane as it's trying to take off. And man, there was a moment where I kind of questioned if this was the same runway as Fast and Furious 6.
Yes, it's very long.
It is the longest runway in history. And I questioned that. And then like 3 minutes later, I decided, no, this actually is the runway from Fast. It has to be.
Yeah.
The scene is still happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Hobbs and Shaw travel theory of runways is Fast and Furious 6.
Yeah.
But this action scene would be the closing action scene of a lesser movie.
Absolutely.
And we keep bumping into this in great bad movies. You start with something big.
Because, then they stop it. The plane crashes and there's a shootout.
Right.
With lots of people, again, jumping out of doors and windows and shooting, and then sparks flying and like office paper just flying up everywhere.
Barrels are flying up from explosions. That's a big move in this movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
They really did crash this plane into this thing. They had 13 cameras rolling.
Doesn't surprise me. They don't make movies like this anymore with the real stunts and real explosions.
Right. Lots of practical stuff going on.
Yeah. And I love that piece of it. You kind of can really feel it.
You really can.
Yeah. So I love that.
According to producer Barry M. Osborne, most of the challenging action scenes were supposed to be green screen shots, but they filmed them practically to support the, quote, realism of story.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's why this movie's so realistic.
Yeah. It's so good.
If Tony Scott was filming that plane crashing into that hangar, they used 13 cameras. How many cameras do you think Tony Scott would have used?
At least twice that.
That's not the answer we were going for. The answer we were going for was how many cameras exist?
It would also be filmed on like 14 other helicopters around it.
Yep. But the scene's amazing. It is incredible.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, you're in good hands after this scene.
Yeah. It's got also one of my favorite kind of tropes that we have. It's where they're counting the bullets. And so they like both are pointing a gun at each other and like each have one shot left or something like that.
Love it.
So good.
I also like that John Travolta is like saving everybody from themselves. They don't know that when somebody's standing there pointing a gun at them that they're going to get shot. And he has to like run behind them and get them down so they don't get shot.
Yeah.
These are all professionals. Do they not know that when somebody's standing there with a gun, they might get shot?
No, and they're all standing like not behind anything, just totally out in the open.
And many of them do get shot. John Travolta's pretty pissed about it when he goes back to the office.
Yeah. They made a really big deal about the person who gets shot in the ear.
Yeah, they do.
The one main squib. And that's how they introduce the technology of the Dr. Walsh that is going to do the face swap.
And he works for the BioCover unit. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they catch Castor Troy. He's in a coma now.
Everyone thinks he's dead.
And so everybody's celebrating at the office, and somebody sends like a bottle of champagne to the office. And John Travolta doesn't like that they've sent champagne because people died. So here's what he does in the office when they say this champagne. We all know that, he's had a rough couple years because his son died. He's tight with Anderson. Obviously, Montgomery got hurt. Berkely. Long pause. And then I think what he does is he starts making up coworkers' last names.
I think so.
Because if you're making up names, is there a better made up name than Pinkus?
Yeah.
I don't think there was a Pinkus. I think they should have cut to everybody, including Margaret Cho, the comedian Margaret Cho, who works in the office, and just like, what? There was no Pinkus.
Yeah.
And then he says Gianelli and Winters. He's clearly just making up names right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they face swap, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's the rest of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
John Travolta is like going around the office like a madman. And Nicolas Cage is going around like a madman.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it harder to distinguish who is crazier when they switch spots.
Yeah.
And this is a problem with this movie for me.
Or maybe that's the point, is that they're more cut from the same cloth than we think.
I see. John Woo talks about how his favorite good guys have a little bit of bad in them, and his favorite bad guys have a little bit of good.
Yeah.
And he really likes that distinction. So this, swapping the good guy and the bad guy, he liked that happening in this movie. But then we get to this outlandish idea that maybe John Travolta should put Nicolas Cage's face on him so that he can go talk to his brother who's in jail.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage's brother, Pollux Troy. By the way, if you have 2 more kids, would you name them Pollux and
Castor? Absolutely.
Castor? Yeah.
Jillian looked it up. They're actually Greek and Roman gods that were brothers.
Okay. Yeah.
Pollux and Castor. Yeah, absolutely. I like them. They're cool names. So
third place is a very distant third, I think, for the Sky Tucker family. I think Pollux and Castor.
Yeah.
And both of them have the middle name Troy, obviously.
Obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when they start talking about how they need to do this, the science fiction aspect of this movie was dramatically dropped so that it's happening like in current day. But there's this thing we can do in the bio cover unit. And the way that they try to explain this
is so good.
This world. We meet Gina Gershon, Nick Cassavetes, who showed up to this movie. He decided to shave his head.
Yeah.
Bald guy with a big earring is a real bad guy trope.
Yeah.
I learned while watching this movie. But John Woo was pretty stoked that he had shaved his head. Like, I love this idea. This is exactly who I thought the character should be. Gina Gershon, super successful and like super funny, super dramatic. She can really good actor. Nick Cassavetes, he had a movie that came out 2 months after this movie came out called She's So Lovely, I think is what it was called. He directed it. He wrote it. Actually, I don't know if he wrote it. I think his dad, the super famous actor, writer, director, John Cassavetes had written that movie.
Right. That's right.
And She's So Lovely had Sean Penn, Robin Wright Penn, and John Travolta.
Crazy.
And he went on to make a ton of movies that were well regarded, or at least did really well. Like he directed The Notebook with Gosling and Rachel McAdams. He made Alpha Dog with Bruce Willis and Justin Timberlake. That's a movie where people go, oh, it's better than you think it's going to be. There's like super talented, high functioning people in Face Off making what should be the worst movie. And I think that might be the secret to this movie's success is very smart, very talented people got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have the science fiction aspect, which I did appreciate that they didn't go into too much detail.
They cut that out.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about when they do the face swap and they're talking about it is this beautiful exposition that you don't need to have the same blood type. And I feel like they're like, if they could have flashed on the screen, you don't need the same blood type. Remember this. This might come back in the future.
Yeah, totally.
Which flies in the face of everything that we know about
how bodies work.
Yeah, how bodies work.
It's a lot like, and there might be an F-14 around in Top Gun Maverick.
Exactly. The Tomcat, if you will. Remember that from 1987?
Much like what you learned right there, I learned that if there's ever going to be a partner to a cop in a movie, their name should be Tito. Can we agree on that?
Yes, we can agree on that.
One Tito is bare minimum amount of Titos I want to see as a partner in a movie. Before John Travolta swaps the faces, he gives his ring to Tito. Like, hey, you're going to need this. Will you hold on to this for me? Have you ever lost your wedding ring?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever not worn it for a while?
No, it's always just there.
Yeah, totally. I was in traffic one time because I worked on the east side of Seattle and I was going back to my house in Seattle. So I was in traffic on 520 Bridge and I don't know what I was thinking about, but I was just kind of like playing with my ring on my finger and I dropped it in my car and it rolled to some place that I could not find.
Oh, no. So
for a couple of days, my wedding ring was just like stuck under the driver's seat in some crevice. And I felt so weird. It's a thing I don't even notice is there most every day. And then for like a couple of days, like it felt extra breezy right there.
Yeah.
And I felt so weird. And Nicole was just like, it's no big deal. It's totally fine. We'll just get you another ring. It's fine. I don't know if Tito was picking up on that kind of energy, but I bet.
Probably. Classic Tito.
Yeah, totally. Tito gets it. You kidding me? Every good partner is going to get it. But you have to think in that moment, John Travolta felt a little weird taking his ring off.
Probably.
I took the seat out of my car and found it. And so we did not have to get another one. It's awesome. Alarmingly easy to take a seat out of a car. That's what I learned that day, by the way.
All right.
It's pretty bizarre. It's a very quick socket wrench scenario to get a
good to know.
car seat out if you ever need to steal one.
So we have face swap. Now we're going to prison.
None of the punches in this prison scene looked real to me.
Yeah. I had a moment in this movie, and I have to say that John Woo walked so David Leitch and Chad Stahelski can run.
Sure.
John Woo is the beginning of gun fu in a lot of ways. I missed better stunts. It was a lot of like, we're shooting this way, and then we'll just have people over here that get shot by it, and then we're shooting back, and it just felt very disjointed at different points. I missed that John Wick, David Leitch, where it's a little bit more happens within the frame.
Yep.
The explosions are great. Some of the chases are really fun, but...
Yeah. Here's what I would say. I would say the bullet points of ideas for what the action scenes should be in this movie are some of the best we've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Some of the particulars of how to do that fight scene definitely needed 8711, the David Leitch, Chad Stahelski. And this is something I didn't talk about in the John Wick episode, but David Leitch talks about when you're training people to do stunts, if they know judo or whatever, that's helpful to a certain extent, but that's not actually what you do in movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice if they know that stuff, but then you have to teach them how to essentially dance.
Right.
And so he said, really what we teach people is essentially ballet, and they have to memorize those dance moves so that they don't get hurt, but it has to look like something. And I feel like that's what's missing. That's the fine touch that they put on things in their movies where people really do look like they're getting, punched over and over again. In that jail scene, John Woo wanted some reality. And so those are actually like ex-convicts that are in jail.
Interesting.
They were all like non-actors so that they would look right. But when it came to the action scene of them punching, it was like, wow, this is really slow. And they are obviously not actually punching anybody.
Yeah.
And he gave the direction, don't ever try to pretend to punch somebody in the face because we think that the audience will freak out, that it'll hurt, Nicolas Cage too much if he gets punched in the face because it's such a key point. So it's all like body blows. And so it's like already half as exciting, and they're not stunt performers. It's very rough.
Yeah. They couldn't get out of that jail fast enough for me.
And what do? They like somehow do something with the electricity and sparks are flying everywhere.
Sparks are flying everywhere in every action scene, not just this one. Yeah, sparks are flying, and then they get out, and he gets the boots that have the magnets unmagnetized, and then he's on an oil rig somewhere. And
so this is one of a couple scenes that could not be done fast enough. Yeah, so he gets out of the jail, he breaks out, he goes to the roof of the jail, and we find out that it's in the middle of the ocean. We get this high up shot to show that Nicolas Cage is on top of this thing, and there is nothing for miles anywhere to be seen. And then we cut to right where we just had a view of, and a helicopter shows up from right there.
Yes, that's right.
And we have the most amazing helicopter out of nowhere that literally made me clap in my house, because it's not just a helicopter out of nowhere. It's not that he couldn't hear it and it was right below the deck of what he was standing on. We were actually just looking at that place and it was not there. So it's also his eyes that see. It was an invisible helicopter out of nowhere.
It's the best kind of helicopter out of nowhere.
It's literally out of nowhere. This helicopter did not exist a second ago in space and time, and now it does. And so now we have basically the Die Hard when he's on the roof and the helicopters are flying by and trying to shoot him.
Yep.
And he's like jumping down off levels and, barrels are shooting up in the air from being shot at by this helicopter. Oh my gosh, the helicopter disappears for like a second. We suddenly can't hear it again and it shows up again. It's a double helicopter out of nowhere, Joe.
I missed that part of it, but that is so awesome.
At this moment, would he not be keenly aware of where the helicopter is? He somehow loses track of it and it happens again. And it is the greatest thing that's ever happened in film history. They blow up some thing near him and it like sprays his shoes with flammable stuff. And now his shoes are on fire. So in the middle of this Die Hard scene, he has to take his shoes off and now he's barefoot. And then the way he escapes is he jumps off the top of this building into the ocean, Helicopter is still there with a great vantage point to see where he is if he's swimming.
Right.
Cut to, he's made it to town.
Yeah.
He somehow swims under the ocean. A helicopter that is right there cannot see him. We're good to go. He made it back to town.
Yeah.
No need for explanation.
As long as he jumps into the water, he's fine, and he can swim for miles. It's all good. Yeah.
And he's barefoot now.
Yeah.
And they cut to him outside a valet parking lot, barefoot.
Yeah.
And he steals some keys, does the old school whip, whip, and then he gets a car to steal.
Yep. And he's back with Gina Gershon and Nick Cassavetes.
Right. Yep.
And off we go. One of my favorite parts about this movie is also how quickly people accept the fact that the face swap has happened. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're Castor Troy, even though you look like Sean Archer. And they just go with it, and vice versa.
So who accepts it first?
I think Pollux Troy accepts that Sean Archer.
Yeah, he knows somehow.
Yeah, just like instantly. And he's very questioning of Nicolas Cage when he gets into the jail, that it's really him.
Yep.
Maybe like, oh, you're supposed to be dead. So he's very suspicious of that.
Yep.
Similarly, when Nicolas Cage comes to his wife and explains, and that's where she does the
blood test. Yeah.
Yes. Even though she is, her husband is there and they're kind of rekindling their romance. And because Castor Troy is in her life, the passion has been reignited in their marriage a little bit.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, here's the arch nemesis who killed their son. And she just kind of goes with, oh, I will believe that this is possible. So just Joan Allen in lesser hands would probably not have failed. This is like next when you have Julianne Moore delivering crazy line after crazy line. This is Joan Allen, probably the best actor in this entire movie.
She actually pulls a move that Nicolas Cage pulls a few times where she is just shaking. Like he is shaking when he realizes he's stuck in jail, and he's like shaking his hands and he's touching his face a lot. There's so many times that they touch their face in this movie.
Yeah.
But she's just sitting there shaking. And apparently we're supposed to believe that she doesn't actually know that he's telling the truth until the blood test. So the whole scene where Nicolas Cage has the impossible job of explaining out loud what the plot to this movie is.
Yes.
Something you would wish on nobody. But he is having the time of his life explaining this. He's like laughing at first, and he's screaming, and then he's crying. All unbelievable. Unbelievable. She's like sitting there shaking. Here's what's crazy about that scene. First of all, it is so excruciating to hear somebody talk out loud about what it is that I'm watching. And I just have I have to look at myself in the mirror in that moment, in a way that I'm uncomfortable with. This is exactly like the story I told when my wife came home 5 minutes before Taken was over, and I'd press pause, and then I explained to her. Do you think they're just like, what on earth do I do for a living? This is so ridiculous.
I don't know. He feels like he lives in a world that I don't live in.
Sure.
Like this is just normal for him, but that's wild.
Can we talk for a second about when Nicolas Cage is in like the evil person lair and he's talking to Nick Cassavetes, and like his old henchmen think that he's Castor Troy, and he's kind of like pretending like he's this bad guy in the lair. This brought to mind The Rock, actually, when Nicolas Cage is trying to be tough, but he clearly isn't. And he's like totally faking that it's appropriate for him to be in this place. Here is him talking to Nick Cassavetes when they reunite.
Oh, man, you scared me, man. All right. All right.
That's Nick Cassavetes kissing Nicolas Cage, and he's not stoked that he's being kissed by Nick Cassavetes. He's like, all right. His ha-ha is a thing that was all over the world in the 90s. I don't know if you remember that, but in the 90s, that was an awkward laugh that everybody did.
I never should have sold you those bombs. What?
You drug dealer?
Yeah.
It's so entertaining.
Yeah.
And then he gets drugged. He starts saying the title of the movie over and over and over again with Nick Cassavetes. This is Nicolas Cage going off script. At this moment in the scene, John Woo yells cut. They don't stop filming, though. And Nick Cassavetes, who his dad is famous for improvisation, not being method, really just catching what's happening in the room on camera. That was his whole thing, kind of indie filmmaker. he and Nicolas Cage just keep talking as if they're in character, and they were just joking around, but they happened to be. In the commentary said they did this for 5 minutes.
That's awesome.
They kept saying face off for 5 minutes. And then when we were editing it, we realized the footage was there. And if we put ominous music behind it, we realized, oh, this is actually kind of a cool scene.
It works because it sells him as Castor Troy.
Yep.
Being the crazy sociopath that we know him to be from the beginning of this. So
yeah. He goes to his room and he lays down in his bed in the funniest way a human being could lay for a second.
Yep.
And then he falls off the bed because this is where it's a farce.
Yeah.
And then he looks in the mirror, and this is how deep this movie gets. He just starts saying, "I'm not me." It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Gina Gershon comes in. This isn't explained at all, but John Travolta and like the rest of the government agency, they show up to just completely shoot out the whole place. And Nicolas Cage is trying to not kill any of the good guys because he's also one of the good guys secretly.
Right. Yeah.
And he's also trying to keep the kid safe. Who he has learned is Castor Troy's son.
Yeah. And
they put on headphones onto the kid so that he is listening to Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Probably.
Okay, so this is really interesting. I have some more audio to play of John Woo in his commentary. He's talking about this scene where the boy is watching all this happen and he has this music in his head. And he said the reason he wanted to do that was because movies and music were something that really helped him feel hope when he was a kid. And so here is him talking about that scene.
I was grow up in a very bad neighborhood, where we were living with, a lot of gangsters, drug dealers, hookers, that kind of area. So I always feel I was living in hell. So I always, try to escape. I always, going to the theater. One is the theater and the other thing is the church. They're the two places, and I have found my heaven. When I was in the theater, I love to watch a musical because the musical gave me a lot of hope and a lot of dream and a lot of love, So that's why I think the scene also bring back my, childhood memory.
It's another moment in a movie where the director's intent and then what actually happens are very divergent to me. Like, it's creepy. It's a weird scene.
Yep.
But it's also like trying to shield the kid from the violence of the world. It's impossible because it's like erupting around him. So I don't know. It's a great scene, but what he's describing and what is happening in the movie are very different.
I found this to be so sweet, and it's so hard to think like a really sweet man who's trying to say something like this makes face off.
Yep.
But operatic is definitely a word for the movies that he makes.
Yep.
If he loved going to the theater and seeing musicals when he was a kid, he is definitely doing that with operatic
violence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it about it that makes it just like, well, this is fun? It's almost, this is the trick that John Wick does as well.
Yep.
Should be horrifying, yet there's something about it that is operatic. You're kind of like, okay, it's video game. It's not real. It's making a point.
Yeah. I remember that in The Killer because it's, the killer, he's being pursued by a cop. And by the end, they have kind of formed an alliance together and kind of a mutual respect.
Yeah.
As the cop is chasing this killer because he lives by a code.
Right.
And if I think of his action scenes, the way that you have musical numbers in musicals, I'm like, I can kind of see that. And it probably doesn't hold up to today's action the same way of like, John Wick and what it does and, some of these things. But like The Killer, there were things I had never seen.
Yeah.
As an action, fan.
Sure.
Where I was like, what is this? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yep.
And so I can see it from that perspective of his action being kind of the musical numbers in a musical almost.
So creative. So creative. Great story about the screenwriters who had written this movie. It was a very sci-fi-ish movie. In like 1993, 1992. there was some theater in LA where they went to go see a movie and a trailer for, I think, Hard Boiled played before the movie. And they completely freaked out over this trailer. So much so that they went to the movie again the next day so they could see the trailer again. And then a couple weeks later, Hard Boiled played in LA and they went to go see it at this theater. And the two people who wrote this movie, after Hard Boiled, they looked at each other and said, we've written a John Woo movie. We should get John Woo to direct it. And at that point, Joel Silver was attached to this script. And he reached out to John Woo and said, the writers really want you to direct this. Can we talk? And John Woo turned it down. Because it was so sci-fi. And he's like, this isn't for me. And then they toned down all the sci-fi. And Michael Douglas became the producer of this movie.
Interesting.
He reached out to John Woo. And they all flew up to Vancouver to talk to him. And John Woo was making something like a TV show or something. And he was exhausted. And they talked at him for 3 hours about what this movie was. This is now in 1996, I think. And John Woo was so exhausted, he didn't say anything in the meeting. And so then they left. They were going to meet up again the next morning. And John Woo went up to Michael Douglas, shook his hand and said, I know I didn't say much in the meeting yesterday. I'm so exhausted from the thing I'm working on, but you can trust me that I'll make a great movie. And Michael Douglas like winked at him and said, oh, I know you'll make a great movie. I've got a good nose for these sorts of things. And it was on.
That's awesome.
That's the whole deal. Yeah. Can I say one more thing about that shootout?
Yeah, absolutely.
Way too long. Way too long. And the studio wanted to cut it down. And John Woo said, this is so important to me because he's going to be listening to the song. And so he said, I'll pay for this scene with my money. And so they continued filming it. And then when the movie came out, the studio had decided it was such a good movie that they would pay for whatever John Woo did. But it's way too long. This stretch of the movie is just impossibly long.
Yeah, we haven't even really gotten into the part of the movie where John Travolta as Castor Troy is assumed the role in the family.
Yeah.
Then we move into the third act where John Travolta as Castor Troy kills his boss.
Well, he looks at him and the boss has a heart attack. And it can't be overstated that everything that happens in this movie has like an amazing Tony Scott sound effect as well.
Yes.
10 out of 10.
And then they have to go to the funeral.
Right.
Which gives us the excuse for John Woo doves to be involved. And so John Travolta is there with his family and Nicolas Cage is coming to confront them. And that's where we kind of have the final battle scene. You have Nicolas Cage as Sean Archer walking through seagulls and doves in slow motion as they fly out of his way. So anytime you're watching a John Woo movie, just look for the birds. Like
absolutely.
They're always there.
So yeah, it's after the funeral. Nicolas Cage is sitting there staring at the crucifixion scene. And then John Travolta as the bad guy walks in. And do we need to talk about what he doves flying everywhere? They start having a shootout inside this church.
So many filmmakers could learn a lesson around slow motion and sound effects from John Woo.
I think what we're learning is so many people have learned.
Yes, fair.
I mean, I bet this goes back to like Clint Eastwood movies. I know we go back to those, but I bet this is like a Western trope, you know? I decided this week, though, that we need a name for this.
Yeah.
I want to call them boom shoes. How do you feel about the term boom shoes?
I'm in.
Okay. I think most every great bad movie should have boom shoes at some point.
Yeah. I always appreciate when you have unnecessary, impossible sound effects that accompany putting on jackets, walking, anything. It's just, it just to me amplifies the scene so good. It's just like, oh, this is the kind of movie we're watching. This is my kind of movie. So
it's so great. Boom shoes. You got to walk in with some boom shoes.
Yeah. And it's got to be slow motion. Like this is where I think Tony Scott and John Woo have heightened it to an art form.
100%.
So it's so good. I just love it so much.
I also wanted to point out in that scene that goes way too long where they're the shootout before the funeral, they don't go to slow motion much in that. But then once we get to the rest of the movie,
it's a different story.
It's a different story and I appreciate it.
Yeah. A lot of John Woo's, like his slow motion isn't in the action. It's like in the lead up to the action.
Oh yeah. It's a crescendo.
So there's like moments where it's like a hand reaching for a gun, or it's Tom Cruise where there's like wind on his face in a building where there is no wind, and like, you know, the hairs and slow-mo, like those are the moments to me. That's the John Woo slow-mo. It's just building the tension in a scene.
Yeah. I think it could be done a little bit more subtly.
Yeah, subtle is not his calling card.
No, not at all. But yeah, completely agree. So they have this shootout, and then we get to a classic John Woo thing where they're standing very close to each other, and there's a big mirror for some reason inside this church. Double-sided mirror.
Yes.
And they are on both sides of the double-sided mirror. Break the mirror. And then Joan Allen shows up.
Yep.
Joan Allen is now in between them. There is also like one of the bad guy's henchmen there. And then Gina Gershon shows up with another henchman. They're holding two guns now, and everybody's like pointing at a bunch of different people and who's going to start this. And if I read this right, Gina Gershon started this.
I think so.
She's ready for things to happen.
Yeah, she's ready for action.
Joan Allen doesn't have a gun, so she grabs a chair and just completely knocks out John Travolta with this chair. Total game changer, this chair.
Yeah. This is also the scene at the end here where they're shooting handguns, and then all of a sudden, John Travolta and Nicolas Cage have machine gun handguns. They're just like shooting everywhere indiscriminately. That was a surprise to me that their handguns magically turned into machine guns. So
we've all been there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously.
That's pretty common. This is also a scene where there are so many shots of guns going off in slow motion and birds everywhere. They never show a bird getting hit.
No, they're magical.
There are bullets flying everywhere. And there's like 3 dozen doves in the area. Not one bird is harmed.
No.
John Woo calls it out in the commentary. He's like, well, I mean, we had to have doves in here, right?
Yeah.
It's my calling card. So this church is run on a beach.
Yeah.
What happens then, Joe?
Oh, then we are in a boat chase on the water.
Yeah. Are you ready to have the conversation that needs to happen about boat chases in movies?
Yes, absolutely.
They jump in these boats. What's Joe Sky Tucker's like response to, there's going to be a boat chase?
I like boat chases.
Okay. You're generally pleased.
I'm generally pleased to see it.
Finally, we disagree on something. I am generally displeased that we're doing this because I think boat chases are usually pretty lackluster.
Did you see the one in this movie? Because it's not.
Well, it's kind of nice because they have those aerial shots above them, and the wake that they're leaving is kind of beautiful, and they're moving kind of fast. And every other thing that's floating on whatever body of water this is not moving at all, basically.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
So they are going by super fast and like swirling around things.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're going pretty fast.
Yeah. And they catch up with like one person gets ahead and they like run into something, and then all of a sudden they're right next to each other
Just
again.
Right next to each other again. Yeah. It's incredible.
It's amazing.
So if you are in a boat chase, what's the logical first move if you are in a boat next to someone that you're trying to catch? You start smashing into them.
Yeah.
Just like traffic, right?
Yeah, like you're in a car, you're trying to like run them off the road, but you're not really on a road, so it doesn't really make sense. Like you could probably shoot them or...
Audible eye rolls happening from me at this moment in the movie. Just yawning, wondering what else is happening in the world, probably checking my social feeds.
Yeah.
Total apathy. But one of those hits is pretty amazing. It happens in super slow motion, and it almost like tips the boat over. It's like the real deal.
And then they're on the same boat together.
Well, hold on. You just skipped 8 steps. After this happens, and I'm like, interesting. Okay, that was a pretty strong hit. Now one of them crosses over in front of the other one, and like Nicolas Cage has to like jump the wake of John Travolta's boat, and he jumps the most underwhelming 9 inches above the water. And I'm back to checking my socials. I'm out again. They've probably traveled, like a mile on the water at this point? Then they start shooting at each other.
Yeah.
How embarrassed do you think both of them were that this didn't occur to them before this? Wait a minute. I had like my mini machine gun right here this whole time.
Yeah.
What was the whole wake jumping thing? That's ridiculous.
Think it was like we hired people that could jump over wakes. So
yeah,
this scene is hard for me because there are a few scenes in this movie, but this one was the most glaring of it is so clearly stuntmen in it. And there are a few other scenes in it where it's like clearly wearing a bad wig and hiding their face. But
100%.
This one is the worst.
Yeah.
And then it's like close up on the boat of them driving, long shot, clearly stuntman.
This is a movie from the 90s that is now available in 4K. And this is the one thing that is especially egregious. You can see some wires when they're attached to wires sometimes.
Yeah.
They use CG to like cut out or paint out some of the wires sometimes, but sometimes they didn't.
Sometimes they didn't.
In this movie, they often use CG to put Nicolas Cage's face on the stuntman, but there are so many times that they didn't. Probably not noticeable on like a DVD back in the day.
Yeah.
A little bit more noticeable on a Blu-ray. Now that it's in 4K, oh my gosh.
Yeah. There were some rough moments, which just made me love it even more. But I was like, oh, that's not them at all. They're not even trying.
Right. Yeah. Then they bump into a police boat that's pretty big. It's like a 2-floor police boat. There's probably like 9 police officers on this boat saying you need to slow down. John Travolta is able to shoot everyone on this boat immediately. I think he also shot into Nicolas Cage's boat and like opened up a gas line, forces Nicolas Cage to go through the police boat.
Yeah.
In an amazing stunt.
Yeah. Perfectly doesn't get hurt, doesn't slow down, just like barrels right through this other boat.
Right.
While everyone dies and jumps off. And it's perfect.
It could not be more noticeable. This boat chase starts after the 2-hour mark of this movie, by the way. John Travolta is not able to shoot anybody in this movie well, but he can from his speeding boat.
Yeah.
He can't shoot Nicolas Cage, obviously.
No.
But I have to tell you a story that the screenwriters told from this moment in the movie. When they were like running and shooting at each other to the boats, Nicolas Cage asked one of the writers, "We've been filming this movie for 6 months. John Travolta and our characters have been shooting at each other for 6 months. And why is it we can never hit each other?" And the screenwriter stands there and is trying to think of a reason. And before he can think of one, Nicolas Cage goes, "Oh, I get it, because they're secretly in love with each other. Okay, got it."
Okay.
And they just go with that.
Okay.
That's what it's like to make a movie with Nicolas Cage. Just don't answer and let him come up with something.
Yeah. I mean, what's going to be better than that answer?
Nothing is going to be better. So now Nicolas Cage crashes through the police boat, which obviously causes the police boat to explode.
Yes.
Which is about the moment that I wake up and I start to appreciate that this boat chase scene is the first boat chase scene I've ever been interested in my life.
Yeah, you got me.
So now his boat is on fire and the fuel is leaking. So obviously Nicolas Cage needs to jump over into John Travolta's boat. But he isn't able to get all the way to the boat. He's like holding on to the side.
Yeah.
And then he jumps in and they start fighting. So now they're having a fight in the boat. The boat that he jumped out of crashes into another boat. So of course, both of those boats explode.
Yep. On impact.
It's like a big tanker or something. Now he's on the boat with Travolta and we have a fist fight scenario for a second before Travolta grabs an anchor and starts swinging it at Nicolas Cage. And this anchor makes an amazing amount of noise as it's piercing the air as he's swinging it. It is unbelievable. So Nicolas Cage obviously needs to get out of the boat. He grabs a chain and now he's water skiing on the water, holding onto this chain.
That's right. That's right.
At this point, it's like, this is incredible. There was a real dip there for a while in this movie for about 30 to 40 minutes. And now I'm back.
Yeah.
I do just need to pause for a second. When he was water skiing next to the boat, John Woo said that was the most dangerous stunt in the movie. Because what was happening when he was doing that was the way the boat's made, it kept like grabbing his leg and the guy almost got sucked under the boat.
Crazy.
A couple times. And there's one shot, I guess, where you can see his leg like whip under. So he gets back and John Woo's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he goes, "I'm fine. Don't worry about it." But when his leg whipped under the boat that one time, it makes his legs swell up so much that he can't get his pants off.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
They have to like cut his pants off because he's swelling so much. And he was like out of commission for a few days.
That's wild.
So not like real people are making these movies. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So now they're headed towards the beach. They hit a thing. The thing makes the boat fly up in the air.
Yeah. They are miraculously flying through the air. I think there's an explosion behind them, if I remember.
Yeah, the boat flies up, and when it lands on the ground, obviously a boat hitting the ground is going to make the most amazing explosion in history.
Yeah. And then they kind of land at the most miraculously perfect spot in the sand between like another boat
Yep.
and something else on the ground.
Right. Right.
and they're safe on the ground.
But as they're flying through the air, what's really happening is like it's stunt guy is connected to a cable and the cable is pulling them so that they're like crazy midair flailing. Water is flying everywhere. The boat is really behind them and then it explodes.
It's a real explosion.
Real explosion. There's no CG in this shot. This is a thing that really happened. The only CG that they did in this moment, and not for the whole moment, is they CG put Travolta and Cage's faces on the stunt people. Which
interesting.
Clearly they didn't really do for a lot of the shots because you can totally tell it's not them flying through the air.
That's wild. I, for some reason, thought that they had done the stunt people flying through the air and then kind of blew up the boat and then kind of superimposed them together or something like that. So that's wild that they did it in one shot.
I'm assuming that as they were flying through the air, at that very moment, America won every award that a country can win in the Life Awards. I don't know what competition was happening, but at this very moment, America won all of the awards that were given out for like the next decade.
Agreed.
It is the greatest conclusion to what started out as the most ho-hum set piece. This movie just entirely won me over at this moment. And this last time I watched it, there were some low points. I was questioning some things for a while there. Like, was this movie as great as I thought it was?
Yeah.
And this is the reason I loved this movie. This last part, just like, okay, well, we're back. Everybody wins. So they land on the beach. There's like a spear gun.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage is trying to shoot John Travolta. John Travolta grabs the top of it so the spear doesn't dislodge or whatever.
Right.
And then he starts cutting his face saying, every time you look in the mirror, you're going to see this or whatever. Pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
John Woo's idea. Weird that Somewhere Over the Rainbow wasn't playing while he did it.
I know. Should have been. Missed opportunity.
And then something happens and he's speared and the bad guy has finally died. John Travolta then, as he's dying, starts singing a song. And the lyrics are, ready for the big ride, baby. Is this a callback to something? As he was doing it, I was like, I don't want to know where this came from. I want to think that John Travolta started improvising a song called Ready for the Big Ride, Baby as his character was dying. That's all I need to know. America's already won all the awards here.
Yeah, exactly.
This is just frosting on the cake here.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're able to face on. Is that what we call that procedure?
Yeah, face on. Yeah. And then my favorite part of this entire movie is the last scene. So
what happens in that scene, Joe?
So you have the big reveal of John Travolta coming back as himself.
Right. Back to his house.
Yeah. So it is set up to be like they're surprised that he's coming back.
Sure.
Even though his wife was integral in the part of him getting the surgery.
Sure.
To get his face.
She had to check her email or whatever.
Yeah, something.
She's distracted by a screen.
And so then, wife and daughter hug him. Oh, you think it's going to end there. And he's like, but wait, there's a kid here that was Castor Troy's son that's now our son. And everyone is just okay with it, which I'm totally fine with them. Like, oh, come on in. And the daughter takes him off and the wife hugs him and like credits. My favorite part is like, they have like this really tender moment where the family is back together.
Right.
And this kid is just standing there outside the door waiting.
It's what the rest of his childhood is going to be like with this family. Always on the outside.
Exactly. Cut to the years and years of therapy that this kid is going to need to feel like a real part of this family.
Totally.
But it's so ridiculous. And it just works. It's like, that's the moment that's like chef's kiss. You did it.
Totally.
Stuck the landing. Whatever else you can say.
I think the main reason this works is because they have already just John Wooed us to death.
Yes.
There have been so many illogical leaps.
Yeah.
That even the sentimentality in this movie gets John Wooed. Like, yeah, all right. That seems like a thing. Sure. What is it? Like Adam's 5? Hey, show him his new room. Like, did they not change Michael's room at all?
Probably not.
So he's just going to slot right in there.
Yeah, your new name is Michael, and welcome to the family.
Right. Oh my gosh. The older sister, who, by the way, has no eye makeup on now.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming school is going well.
Yeah. Turned a corner.
Everybody's smiling for the maybe the first time in the movie.
Yeah.
John Travolta, Joan Allen, and the daughter. And we haven't had a chance to talk about Oliver Wood. He is the director of photography on this movie.
Okay.
He was the director of photography on Die Hard 2. A movie that also had a helicopter that chased down a plane, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, but also, did you notice the amount of smoke or maybe steam was in the air as John Travolta was walking back into the house? It looked like the whole neighborhood was on fire out their door. I'm assuming this is steam from the pipes from Die Hard 2.
Yeah.
We're still in the prop room and they were able to get those. This movie is beautiful, by the way, in so many ways. Oliver Wood did an incredible job on this film, but I don't know what on earth is happening outside the door here. Maybe the daughter's now a drummer in a band and her drum riser just has a smoke machine that's on all the time and the neighbors are pissed. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Maybe 4K also didn't do this scene any favors because it is so hilarious how smoky and steamy it is. There's a story behind this. The studio really wanted to change this movie a lot, and the writers and John Woo fought them on it. Sorry, I'm going to derail for just a second. One thing they wanted to do was they wanted there to be a very graphic love scene between John Travolta and Joan Allen after the space swap to show how disturbing it was that this had happened. They also wanted a very graphic love scene between Nicolas Cage and Gina Gershon. They really wanted that paralleling to happen, like, wow, they really are in each other's lives. And because it's the 90s and we're a horrible studio, we need some love scenes.
Right.
They refused to do that. And John Woo said, no, I'm going to do a bunch of candles and like really up the romance because that's what Joan Allen's diary is saying that she wishes that she had had. And the reason he did candles is because he... The reason he did candles is because he loves the movie Barry Lyndon by Stanley Kubrick.
Obviously.
Which is a movie that was famously lit with only natural sources. There was no like external lighting. And so it's largely lit by candles. So of course, John Woo is going to bring that into Face Off the way he did Lawrence of Arabia as well.
Yeah.
But I think this is awesome. He's like, no, we're not going to do like a stupid sex scene. We're just going to have it be more romantic because that's what's really happening here. We're going to do it our way because we're grown-ups and they're making a grown-up movie. Another thing the studio really wanted to do was not have Joan Allen. They wanted him to have remarried and have a much younger actress be like the stepmom to the kids. And so that way they could get like somebody who was a couple years older than the daughter to be the wife. So like someone in their 20s,
right?
You know, some hot young actress. And John Woo was like, what are you talking about? The story here is between a married couple who have been through some things. That's where this all, so we're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to get Joan Allen, Oscar winner Joan Allen, who I think at this point was like 41. I love it. I love what they're doing here. Here's another thing the studio wanted in this moment, going back to the scene where he shows up with Adam, the 5-year-old boy. They said audiences are going to hate that you show up with the kid. And he was like, no, that's the whole thing. Like he gets a second chance. He doesn't need the scar in his heart anymore where the bullet went through because he's healed. They literally told him, this is a cultural difference. This seems like something that would make sense in your culture, but won't make sense in ours. Audiences are going to hate this. So they had him film it both ways. Or no, they had him film it without the kid. And then they got a ton of comment cards like, I really thought the kid was going to show up at the end. Seemed like the good guy would be raising the kid. So he got enough budget for half a day to go back and reshoot it with the kids showing up.
Awesome.
And I'm assuming most of that budget went into the smoke out the smoke out the doors. So John Woo, I think in the commentary was kind of saying, look at how ridiculous these people were. They were saying it was a cultural difference. And he was like, no, this is like just human beings want to make sure human beings are taken care of. I don't think that's a cultural thing.
Oh yeah. I was going to say my favorite part about that scene is it's that he comes in, says hi to his family first. Like,
right.
And I'm just imagining the shot from the kid's perspective of him just like standing there awkwardly, waiting to be waved into the frame.
What's the conversation out the door between John Travolta and Adam? Like, hey, give me a minute to sell the idea, okay?
Yeah. Just wait here. I gotta talk to some folks for a second.
That's so funny. If they wanted him to walk in with them, that's a full day of reshoots, and they couldn't afford that.
Exactly.
That's so incredible. And the daughter does the face thing to Adam. The love touch. That's what John Woo called it, the love touch. And I really wish the kid was like, what? I'm out.
Yeah.
Just walks out the door. Runs into one of the fires. Okay. Well, we often talk about actors and directors and the writers. We've talked about the writers quite a bit. There are a couple other people that really we should thank for this movie, and it's the people that we love in great and bad movies, the stunt coordinator and the second unit director.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the second unit director was this guy named William H. Burton Jr., who's worked on a few good movies. It seems like the real star for a Joe Sky Tucker and Greg Swinehart type was the stunt coordinator in this one, this guy named Brian Smers. And he is the one who invented all of these action scenes. John Woo said he's such a nice, unassuming guy, and then he would just come at you with the most crazy ideas. And because he was the stunt coordinator, he would say, and then here's how we'll do it. It's not just the crazy idea, but also like how to do it. So that crazy shot where they're flying through the air and the boat is flying behind them, he knew how to do it. And so William H. Burton is yelling action as they film that. And the stunt coordinator invented it and like rigged it all up and got it so that it was safe. John Woo was there, but not yelling action because he's not the one who yells action for that kind of shot. So Brian Smers, he designed all the action scenes. And then he also designed action scenes for Men in Black, Inspector Gadget, Mission Impossible 2, Unbreakable, Vanilla Sky, Minority Report, Live Free or Die Hard.
Interesting. So it got some bona fides.
Totally, yeah. Shane Black's The Predator, Wind Talkers. Maybe the wrong kind of guy for the stunts in that movie.
Yeah.
He himself was also a very successful second unit director with X-Men 2, with Paycheck. We'll get to Paycheck. Are you kidding me? Eagle Eye. We'll get to Eagle Eye.
Yeah.
He worked with James Mangold, who is getting a lot of praise right now for the Bob Dylan movie. But he also made X-Men Origins Wolverine. He did Night and Day with Tom Cruise. So he's worked with some great directors. He worked on Surrogates with Bruce Willis, Iron Man 3, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is a movie I loved. He did the Venom movies, which might be like a logical extension of Face Off in our modern world.
Yeah, I could see that.
I haven't seen those movies, but from what I've heard, they're bonkers and Face Off-ish.
Yeah, I've seen the first one and I liked it, but I could not remember it. I don't remember anything that happened other than Tom Hardy is amazing in it.
Do you think we'll get to Venom?
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll probably do another superhero movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The last movie I want to mention that Brian Smers worked on, which is also another logical extension of this movie, maybe is the movie This Means War, which we've talked about before. But it has Hardy. It has Chris Pine.
Reese Witherspoon,
directed by McGee, who is maybe a John Woo acolyte.
Yes, I could see that.
Anyways, nice work, Brian Smers. I'm sure John Woo gets a lot of credit here, but we think you should get some more credit than you probably have gotten, because if this stuff was your idea, oh my gosh, that's pretty much the thing that won me over. Not necessarily the performances, although they were great. John Woo and his editor, they're incredible. Brian Smers, nice work on these action scenes.
Absolutely.
Joe, it seems to me that there's a chance that people who are listening to this might not have seen Face Off.
Yeah, it's possible. That's weird, but
they might also be walking through like an old school video store and trying to figure out what movie they should rent tonight because it's 2025 and that's a thing that still happens on our podcast.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm wondering if, as they're walking down the aisles of a Blockbuster Video or something like that, and if they were to pick up Face Off on DVD, we'll say, no, they'd pick it up on VHS probably at first.
Yeah, probably. Beta.
Maybe some Betamax. Yeah. I think it's time to give a synopsis of the movie that would be on the back of that box. That's right. It's time for the back of the box. It's the back of the box.
When Castor Troy, Nicolas Cage, plants a bomb that threatens all of Los Angeles, Sean Archer, John Travolta, must go undercover to find its location as Castor Troy. Using the latest technology, Sean Archer becomes Castor Troy. He must fight his own demons and himself as Castor Troy blackmails the doctors into making him Sean Archer. Under the masterful hand of action legend John Woo, this explosive and philosophical action movie runs the gamut from the sublime to the incredible to the unbelievable. Face off with your fears and see what dreams may come.
Oh my gosh. Wait, am I supposed to go rent What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams now instead?
Maybe.
This is the secret studio ambition to like promote a different movie on the back of this box.
Exactly.
All right. I think I rent it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, you're too good at this. This is ridiculous. I don't know why you don't work in marketing for movies.
I know. Seriously.
But you know what would be even better is if we could get the actual real Joe Sky Tucker, guns a-blazing, pew, pew, pew. Let's get to the real back of the box.
This movie is bonkers, like legitimately ridiculously crazy. It makes no sense and it doesn't need to. If you were there in 1997 and I said John Woo, John Travolta, and Nicolas Cage, all you would have asked is where and when. This movie has it all. 1990s action, unchecked casual sexual harassment, doves flying in slow motion, and actors and a director working all in completely different films. Does it hold up? Does it need to? Or is this peak cinema? All I can say is that I love this film dearly and I'm willing to suffer all the consequences of this choice.
Amazing. That's one of the best real backs of the box. Yeah. That's incredible. Does this movie hold up? Does it need to? I like that you answer the question with a question.
Yeah, exactly.
So why don't we talk about the box office and then we can talk about some reviews here.
Mm-hmm.
This movie cost $80 million.
Okay.
Massive budget for 1997.
Mm-hmm.
This movie made $245 million internationally.
Okay, so it made its money and then some.
Yeah, or globally, I should say. 112 here, 133 international. So this movie's a hit.
Mm-hmm.
This movie should have had a sequel in the works immediately. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. Joe, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes critic score on Face Off is?
I think it's surprisingly high. And I may have seen it, so this is more of an educated guess but I think it's probably near 70.
It feels like a 70.
But realistically, it's probably like 80, 85. That's kind of my gut.
93.
Jeez, that feels really high.
It does. And actually, it's ticked up 1% since the last time I looked at it a couple years ago. I remember it distinctly being in 92. So I think they've added a handful of reviews that have ticked it up a little bit. All right. But interestingly, the audience score, or now the popcorn meter, has not changed in the last couple of years. What do you think the audience score of Face Off is?
Feels like an 85. I'm going to stick with that.
Yep. That's a solid guess. It's 82.
Okay.
It's a rare moment for us where the audience score is lower than the critic score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the audience score feels closer to what this movie is than the critic score, but I don't know. I'm curious. Well, you'll tell me what some of the critics thought of this. But
98 critics reviewed it, and over 250,000 audience members reviewed it. So that might be...
All right.
Let's start with our local paper, Seattle Times. Keith Samanton. I have to precursor that. This is the funniest review.
Okay.
Face Off is a full-blooded movie-going experience. It's 100% movie. 2.5 stars out of 4.
Nailed it.
Great job as always, Keith. Let's see. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I think he did do a good job in this review.
Actually. It's pretty dead on.
Yeah. Janet Maslin of the New York Times. Here comes a mega movie that actually delivers what mega movies promise.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Seller of the USA Today. It could be argued that this movie's callousness towards human life is nihilistic and nasty, but Woo takes everything so absurdly far that audiences laugh at what horrified them moments before.
I would say fair.
That's kind of the John Wickification, you know, of like, what? Oh, why am I going along with this?
Yeah, exactly.
Barbara Schulgasser of the San Francisco Examiner, which is a paper that I subscribe to. My house, it was an afternoon paper. That's it. So you got the latest news in the afternoon,
right,
in the San Francisco area. Style overwhelms any hope of discerning story or acting through the haze of burning, crashing, bleeding, and exploding.
Fair.
Time magazine says, with Face Off, John Woo, the Hong Kong auteur, has made his smartest, wildest, positively wooziest American thriller. Spot on.
Spot on. No notes.
Robert Roten says, I think I finally isolated what irritates me about this movie. It is the fact that it promotes the idea that you can indulge in hatred and vengeance with the positive results.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 out of 4 stars.
Is that a I guess that is a positive review. So.
This is a negative one, according to Rotten Tomatoes. I think this guy took it a little too seriously.
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to Film Freak Central. Walter Chaw says, garbage of the finest vintage.
I'll allow it.
Potentially, that could be a name of our show.
Yeah, potentially the next name.
Chris Barsanti of filmcritic.com. Possibly the greatest and definitely the most exuberant action film to come out of the studio system in the 90s.
That feels a little like hyperbole to me, but I'll allow it for now.
I wish I could kind of like really feel what 1997 felt like and where we were coming from, but it definitely is exuberant.
Yeah.
All right. Time Out Magazine says Woo's poetic kinetic style has evolved, if not to the point of abstraction, then to delirium. He makes a virtue of incredulity.
All right. I'll allow it.
Making a virtue of incredulity sounds like Great Bad Movies to me.
Yeah, exactly. Nailed it.
Los Angeles Times says it's difficult to describe the jolt his films deliver when Woo is on, and he is on with a vengeance here. 5 out of 5 stars.
Wow. Feels a little generous, but
Yep.
I'll allow it.
I don't know. I had a jolts when they were flying through the air. Salon.com, florid, passionate, frequently hilarious, and loaded with messy emotions that no one in his or her right mind should even attempt to explain. It's operatic in its nutball insanity.
That's perfect.
That's pretty good. Stephanie Zacharek of Salon.com. Finally, from the San Francisco Chronicle, the morning news in San Francisco. We did not subscribe. Mike LaSalle said, this is grand movie making with grand acting. 5 out of 5 stars.
Feels again a little generous, but I'll allow it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Joe, is it time for us to get to some drinking games for Face Off?
All right. So we have our stock drinking games again. You don't need to be drinking alcohol. Could be water, soda, coffee, tea. And again, I need that sound effect in everything that I do. And probably for all of my clothes when I put them on and when I take steps down the stairs, whatever it is.
Okay, here's the left leg of your pants.
All right. Silent helicopter, low flying helicopter. Oh, yeah. You're drinking a few different times through
A few different times. Now, what happens if a silent helicopter happens twice? And what happens if that silent helicopter was also invisible?
You're finishing your drink.
That's a finish. Okay.
Yeah. I gave us a push in and enhance. It's not the classic one, but it's when they're in the operating room and they're doing kind of on the monitors, some of the really bad animations of what's going to happen as they switch the bodies. You have a few different moments of when people share a slow motion look in the middle of chaos. Slow motion looks in the middle of chaos is kind of John Woo's thing. So
That's just called a look.
yeah, it's just normal. It's just a normal scene.
It's a redundant sentence.
Yeah. I did put silent suffering and exploding and ringing in the ears, but I'm blanking on when that was. But I feel like there was a moment early in the movie when we have that, but not 100% now.
I'm assuming yes, but I can't remember.
Opening credit scene locks in place with a sound. So we have
The loud fabric.
yes, loud fabric. A few different flashbacks in this to his dying son and those sorts of things. So drink for
Right.
that.
Yep.
I did not give us the crazy CGI or bad CGI. There's some CGI, but like we said, it's really pretty straight with the action scenes.
Yep.
So
Yep.
great bad shots are everywhere in this movie.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's rough.
It's so insane how many times people are able to outrun a machine gun in
Yes.
this movie.
we do not have inexplicably wet streets, but we have inexplicably wet walls in the prison. So I gave you that one. It's kind of gross.
Okay. Okay.
There is no give us the room and there is no Interpol, but that is ours. So
Side note, the crew got really sick while they were filming in that jail because it was really cold and wet.
interesting. Yeah.
Should we get to some unique drinking games for this movie?
Unique. I have a lot. So every time there is John Woo slow-mo, take a drink. That's my first one.
You're so brutal with the drinking games these days.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to say anytime there's a slow clap that happens.
That's good. There's a couple in this movie. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
I have every time you have Nicolas Cage dancing and then follow along because I have a lot. And every time Nicolas Cage is being kind of crazy, take a drink.
Okay.
That's another brutal one.
I'm not going to say every time you see doves.
Okay.
I am going to say every time you see doves in slow motion.
Okay. I have that one too. I have whooshing while putting on clothes or anytime they're loud clothes or
Loud fabric.
yes, loud fabric. Take a drink.
Okay. Anytime they do the face touching thing.
Yeah. The love touch. Take a drink. Anytime sparks fly during a gunfight, take a drink.
Oh, that's really good. Anytime Nicolas Cage touches his face.
Oh, he does that so much. I have that one too.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross. I have anytime you see gold jewelry or gold guns, take a drink.
Oh. Anytime John Travolta touches his face.
Oh, that's a good one. There's a lot of that in this. This is kind of goes along with anytime John Travolta dances or acts crazy, take a drink.
It's good. Anytime they say the words face off.
Oh, that's a really good one. I have anytime there's just casual sexual harassment in the movie, take a drink.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime people are talking to each other while pointing guns at each other.
Oh, that's awesome. I have anytime you see a bullet in slow motion leaving a gun, take a drink.
Yeah. Anytime we cut to the bio cover unit set. How many do you think that is? Like 6?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty good. I think it's a good one.
Yeah. I have anytime you feel uncomfortable with shots of Nicolas Cage's chest hair, take a drink.
It's a subjective drinking game.
Yes.
This is my last one. Anytime someone's hand is shaking.
Oh,
Nicolas Cage and Joan Allen both seem to be shaking a lot through this movie.
Yeah.
And you see it in their hands.
Yeah. I have several that are kind of in the same vein. I have diving while shooting a gun and then flipping while shooting a gun.
Oh my gosh, the flipping. What are they doing with the flipping?
I don't know.
They should have gotten shot while flipping.
Yeah. Oh, and then anytime there's a shootout and there's like flying paper or broken glass and sparks like all at the same time.
Okay.
Take a drink. And then my last one is anytime it's clearly a stuntman in an action scene.
Oh, I love that one. That's a great one. It's time for us to get to Joe's Trope Lightning Round, aka signs you might be watching a great bad movie.
It's not as many tropes as I thought. You have kind of shooting at each other and both run out of bullets or count the bullets. So there's a couple moments like that in the movie. We have revenge as the driver of the protagonist. We have a friend or family member or colleague, usually a person of color, who dies early in the film. So we actually have 2. We have CCH Pounder and is it Tito that are like burned alive by Castor Troy. We have a charismatic bad guy or antagonist. We have lots of explosions on impact for car crashes and boat crashes. We have medical care that's given by, a loved one in this one.
Sure.
I kind of gave this one clothes that fit perfectly. So bodies that fit perfectly.
Sure. Makes sense.
Checking if a gun is loaded. And then we have, and you alluded to this, but like the slow clap or the clapping of everyone in the room when they catch the bad guy. So those are the trope lightning round for you.
Amazing. All right, Joe. Oh my gosh. It's about to get real.
Yeah.
You ready to answer some important questions about Face Off?
I am.
Okay, let's do it. Did Face Off hold up then?
I think it did.
I think it did too.
Yeah.
I was not near theaters. I was working up in Alaska when this movie came out. And so I rented it that fall. And I was talking to my friend, Kathy Jo, who is not someone that you would think would be into John Woo movies. And she said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "My roommates and I are watching Face Off." And she said, "Can you wait 30 minutes? I'll be there soon." And I was like, "Absolutely." So we held out for 30 minutes so Kathy Jo could come over. She shows up with 2 half gallons of ice cream.
Awesome.
And she's just like, "I've seen this movie twice. I love it so much. I'm going to watch it." So I think if Kathy Jo is in on this movie and bringing ice cream, I think it holds up then. Does it hold up now?
It's a little rough in spots, but I still love it.
I didn't regret watching it.
No.
But rough in spots.
Yeah, rough in spots.
Yeah. It shows some age. This movie came out in 1997.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How hard do they sell the good guy in this movie?
Not that hard, but it's like a medium, mid.
Yeah. How hard do they sell the bad guy?
That they do a pretty good job on with Back in the Office, and then even just the fact that they have to like face swap with him. So I think harder than they do the good guy.
Why is there romance in this movie, Joe?
I don't know. It's kind of to show how dead the marriage is and that he has been so single-mindedly focused on Castor Troy and then Castor Troy is back and kind of brings the romance to their relationship. It's weird. I don't know. The romance in this movie feels awkward and a little unpleasant. So I don't know. What's your answer on this one?
I mean, it's the reason for the movie, according to John Woo. That's why he had her standing in between them at the end in that pointing guns at each other scene. He's like, she is the central thing in this movie. I think that John Travolta has been through a trauma. He is not, able to talk about what happened to his son. He's emotionally distant from his family. And the romance creates a safe place for him to be open about his emotions and work through his trauma. That's why there's romance in this movie.
I'll allow it.
So I think you need to rewrite the back of the box to say that.
Okay. Done.
Joe, are we bad people for loving this movie?
100%.
There's no question, right?
No question.
Does it deserve a sequel?
So many sequels. I can't believe there's not a sequel to this movie.
I think a sequel ruins this movie. Yet you're right. And the guy who makes the Godzilla versus Kong movies, Adam something, is writing it. They've been working on this they've been writing it since 2019.
Okay. Well, it better be good then.
And Nicolas Cage has said publicly that Adam would have grown up by now. So the theory of the case is that the script is about Adam growing up, and maybe Adam looks like Nicolas Cage now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So maybe there's a digitally de-aged Nicolas Cage in this.
Oh, good Lord.
So anyways, we'll see. I think there shouldn't be a sequel. I think it ruins it.
Yeah.
Does this movie deserve a prequel?
No prequels.
I agree. Joe, I have a controversial potential new question edition this week.
Okay, sweet.
In reaction to your feelings about Top Gun Maverick, the last movie we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this will move on, but I want to pose this question to you. Hold on. Potential new question.
All right.
Should Face Off have been nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars?
No, not even close.
Hard disagree. I'm a 1000% yes on that.
Okay.
All right, Joe. How can this movie be fixed? AKA, who should be in the remake?
So I have two different answers. And you either go full Hong Kong and you have John Woo and Chow Yun-fat and Jet Li.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
And you remake it there.
Sure.
Or you go full American and you have James Cameron direct with Sly Stallone and Kurt Russell reprising their roles in Tango and Cash for this. That was kind of where I went. How do you remake this movie? Or
you've really got Tango and Cash on the brain.
Yeah.
That movie might be more universal than we thought.
I don't think so, but
okay. If this movie was to be remade right now, we've got to get some middle-aged people to star in it. I think there's a chance that modern day John Travolta is Channing Tatum.
Okay.
Beefcake. He can dance.
Yeah.
I think I like Channing Tatum more than I like John Travolta. He's funnier, more talented.
Better looking, a better person.
I'm going to bump into John Travolta someday.
Yeah.
And he's going to be the most wonderful person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to regret everything I said. I think that there is one person that could recast Nicolas Cage in every Nicolas Cage movie. And that person is Sam Rockwell.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Sam Rockwell would Nicolas Cage the S word out of every movie that Nicolas Cage has ever been in. And I don't think this goes both ways. I don't think Nicolas Cage could be Sam Rockwell in every movie.
No, because Sam Rockwell's like a legitimately great actor.
He has a couple more spices in his cabinet, you know?
Yeah.
So Sam Rockwell, Channing Tatum, they're the stars of this movie. Modern day Joan Allen, I think, is probably Gwyneth Paltrow.
Okay.
And honestly, John Woo just remade The Killer. So I think John Woo comes back. And if he isn't available, and I'm assuming that's because they actually do let him make the third Top Gun movie the way he wanted to make the second Top Gun movie, I say we give it to Chad Stahelski.
Oh, I'm in.
I think Chad Stahelski, you were saying that he does have something that he's doing after the John Wick movies. I think he should do a face-off.
Okay.
But also, I had a second idea.
Okay.
And honestly, I like this one more. We recast with Lupita Nyong'o of Black Panther, Us, the 355, which has a very special place in my heart, and Naomi Harris, Naomi Harris was Moneypenny in the new James Bond movies. She's been in a million things, so I'm just going to say she was also in Michael Mann's Miami Vice.
Okay. Nobody's going to fact check that.
If I have to pick one, I'm going to pick that one. So those two are the stars, and that's way more talent than we need to make this movie. I also think we should do kind of like a mashup where this is a reboot of another franchise at the same time. So we're taking Face Off, we're taking the Face Off of Face Off and applying it to a different movie as well.
Okay.
To reboot another series. Then this reboot is called Thelma versus Louise. I don't know if you remember Thelma and Louise, but Brad Pitt, it was like his big breakout role. I say Brad Pitt returns and maintains his role from the original.
Okay.
So he's kind of taking over the Joan Allen part from Face Off. And actually, those three actors are so expensive that Brad Pitt actually has to take the part of everyone else in the movie as well. We can only afford the three. So it's now just the three of them. I think because Ridley Scott made Thelma and Louise and John Woo made Face Off, and both of them are still working at the top of their craft, I say we do a co-direct scenario, much like David Leitch and Chad Stahelski for John Wick. John Woo and Ridley Scott team up to make Thelma versus Louise.
That's awesome. I'm imagining Thelma versus Louise, but then like Face Off, like the movies. It's awesome. It's perfect. No notes.
All right, Joe. Very important question. What album is 1997's Face Off?
I really struggled with this. I went back and forth. I have a couple different, and I'll kind of walk you through my thought process on it.
Okay.
In a sense, it's a movie that takes itself very seriously, but also can be played for comedic effect kind of accidentally.
Okay.
And so my first thought was it could be This Is Spinal Tap's first album. So it's like they're kind of like a fake band, but they take themselves very seriously within the movie, and they actually make like legitimately kind of good music within the genre that they're in.
Yep.
At the same time, they're not kind of in on the joke, or they are. The other thought that I had was this is kind of like a super group of its time, you know, Nicolas Cage, John Travolta, John Woo. So this is Velvet Revolver's first album, Contraband. So those are the two albums that I came up with of kind of like different thoughts I've had around it, but those are mine. What album is this for you?
Well, let me ask you a question first. As I'm putting songs on our Spotify playlist, Great Bad Movies Music, that everyone can listen to, should I just do both?
I think so.
Do you have two this week?
I think let's do two this week. Yeah.
Okay. So send me what songs you want it to be from those two albums. I approached this from someone who took on a different persona, as if they did a face swap. Obviously, everybody's thinking about Garth Brooks right now and Chris Gaines. That's not what I did. Because this is a really, that's actually kind of an amazing album, the Chris Gaines album. People don't recognize the genius behind that. But I'm going to say that this is the fifth album by David Bowie that came out in 1972. And he did it as the story of an alter ego named Ziggy Stardust. And David Bowie wasn't super famous at the time. His fifth album, this album, which is widely regarded, I think, his best. I think that's kind of just the general consensus. Because he wasn't super famous at the time, people knew him as Ziggy Stardust. So it kind of worked, you know. He was Castor Troy, but he was passing as Sean Archer.
Yep.
So I'm going to say that this is Ziggy Stardust. And the story in that album that they came up with after they had recorded most of the songs, by the way, it was like a retroactively put on it. Ziggy Stardust is a fictional, androgynous, and bisexual rock star who was sent to Earth as a savior before an impending apocalyptic disaster. Tell me this doesn't sound like a future John Woo movie. In the story, Ziggy wins the hearts of fans, but suffers a fall from grace after succumbing to his own ego. That just sounds like Castor Troy to me.
Yep.
I also thought it was interesting that David Bowie, he was born David Jones and changed his name to David Bowie after watching a movie from 1960.
That's awesome.
So he had done this a few times, really.
Yep. I looked at lots of concept albums for this as well.
Yeah.
And I couldn't land on one that I liked. So yeah, I can totally see it though. That's awesome.
So I'll put Starman on our playlist on Spotify. All right, Joe, it's time for us to rate this movie. Our scale is great bad movies, good bad movies, okay bad movie, bad movie, worst case scenario, awful bad movie. How do you rank Face Off.
I can't even pretend this is a great bad movie.
Yeah.
I would love to like talk about I was on the fence or it's okay. No, this is a great bad movie. This is our movie through and through.
Yeah.
It's what this podcast was made to talk about. So
Absolutely.
You know.
This is peak great bad
this
movies.
is peak great bad movie. This is
Yeah.
this might be one of the favorite movies I've done or we've done
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I will bring this moment up in a couple months.
Okay.
When we talk about a different movie. Okay. Joe Sky Tucker.
Yes.
We made it.
We did it. We had the conversation that needed to be had about Face Off. No one else should really talk about this movie if I'm being honest. So
We gave you almost 30 years,
Mhm.
everybody. And now that we've had this conversation, I don't think it needs to be discussed anymore. It needed to happen.
yeah, how dare you not talk about this anymore? So
Well, now, okay, so we're shaming them for not talking about it when we just told them they can't anymore?
yeah. Also,
Okay, great. Oh, and we should also say, as always, spoilers for Face Off.
yeah, spoilers for Face Off. Yeah.
Now, listen, we love making this show. We love talking about movies like this. If you love hearing podcasts about this, we would love it for you to support our podcast. Now, there are a couple ways you can do that. One is simple. Tell your friends, I listen to this podcast. They make drinking games for the movies that we like to watch, and friends everywhere can have a great time. Another way is you can rate and review this podcast on whatever podcast app you're listening to it to. And if you aren't listening to this on a podcast app, you're listening to it on our website, Great Bad Movies, or someplace else, find it on one of your podcast apps and subscribe there. Oh my gosh, Joe, this has been great, but I need to go. I'm late for a handful of, I'm sorry to say this, but a handful of funerals. Let's see, there was Anderson, Montgomery, Berkely. We'll go with Pinkus, Gianelli, and I don't know. We'll just say winter. So I better go.
Yeah. Awesome. That's good. I've got to go bring the son of my mortal enemy home. No, I didn't tell anyone, obviously. Also, when I get home, I'm going to make him stand outside and wait till I said my hellos, and then he can come in as a surprise. It should be fine.
Really a brave move, by the way. And Joan Allen just goes, okay.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yep.
That really could have broken bad.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you, by the way?
Not yet, but
Do you ever bring anybody home? Okay.
yeah.
Well, that works for me because I have accidentally invested too much money in quiet fabrics this whole time. And I realize now there's a future in the opposite, something I like to call loud fabrics. So I better go.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to go set a bomb in LA. Yeah, sounds cool. I know. But instead of a normal amount of time, like 3 or 5 hours, I'm going to set it for at least a week. It'll build more tension that way.
Sure. And I would avoid LA in about a week then,
Yeah.
because it's going to get smoggy, as he says in the movie. Well, that works for me because, Joe, you know how sometimes great art inspires you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would like to announce that I'm going to go back to school after watching Face Off to study biocovers so I can run my own biocover unit someday, like Dr. Malcolm Walsh in that documentary we just watched, Face Off.
That's good. That's interesting because I'm getting a face transplant later today. It seems important to tell you that you don't need the same blood type as the person that you're getting the transplant from. But just as a reminder, it's just an important piece of information that nobody really needs to know about. But just to know, you don't need to have the same blood type as anyone else.
It is weird and totally tertiary that you just mentioned that, and I'm sure it'll never come up again. Okay, well, while you're doing that, I don't know how to say this, but I am so tired of only ominous people around me having boom shoes. Aren't you tired of this?
I am. It sounds terrible.
So I am actually headed out the door right now to go announce my newest brand. I'm calling them Boomies. They're boom shoes for the rest of us.
Oh, that's perfect because
So I better go.
yeah, because I'm going to need those because I'm going to be walking in slow motion while doves fly out of my way. So
Well, that works for me because I'm going to go work at a nonprofit that helps kids stay away from eye makeup, which is clearly something that has the power to get you kicked out of school and robs you of a successful future. So I better go.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And, I mentioned this face transplant I'm having at the exact same time that they're removing my face. They'll also be giving me a haircut. I think that should be fine.
That's no big deal.
No big deal.
Okay. I've never had someone do like that face touching thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to go confront everybody in my family and ask them why they don't love me.
Yeah, I think that's good. I've got to go dive out of a door while shooting, while unfocused sparks are flying all around me. So it should be good.
We've all been there. All right. Well, that works for me. So I will see you soon.
All right. See you soon.